So the North Jetty Special, it's called a jetty because its main purpose is to maintain the navigation channel, but it's somewhat of a hybrid structure. It's this rock jetty with this pier built over the top. We refer to it as a crib structure. And it's completely hollow. So here you can see the rock structure underneath with the crib structure above. And it was famous back in after the 1970s when it was built because it created this wave. So this is first peak. All right, so first peak is colloquially what surfers refer to as a wedge. So on the left side of the screen, you're going to see an incoming wave, and the surfer, he's actually on the reflected wave. It's two waves coming together to form what, for lack of a better term, it's an energy peak. And it just so happens that this can happen around the world and create a pretty good surfing wave. So this was a famous photo in 1995. Can everybody see the reflected wave? It's kind of down the bottom right-hand corner. It's just this little bit of energy coming off the jetty that creates that, or it did create that. So the east coast of Florida is essentially, it's about 300 miles of just kind of, mediocre, regular beach break. But First Peak was something strange, right? It was a standout. And so when First Peak disappeared, it's not too much of a stretch to say that the Florida surfing community lost its pipeline. I mean, look at this wave. Right? It was unlike anything on the coast. So the reason this happens is that the jetty was built to a slight angle at the coastline, which kind of opens up its north face to receive wave energy. And then secondly, it had this reflected surface that was this combination between piles, marine growth, and a rock core. So in the late 90s, this crib structure, or pier, started corroding into concrete structure like anything else, and it was showing significant signs of corrosion and damage. And so the idea at the time was, let's just build a new pier right over the top. Right, this is using top-down construction. It's a common practice for most piers, docks, and coast structures around the world. So here in this photo, you can see the old jetty. That's the pile-driving hammer on the deck there. You can see they skirted the old structure with the new pilings. So, and that's exactly what happened. Exactly what they did. And they did, all things considered, they did an incredible job at tracing the jetty below. So here's the jetty now. This is how it's existed since 2000. It's got this outer row of pilings. And what it's effectively done is it's created what we call this baffle chamber. It's this gap between the outer pilings and the new pilings. So the reflected surface is still there. So now as wave energy comes in and laps up along the jetty, we don't see that reflected wave. Now if you look carefully, you'll see a little tiny surge. Right? So it's trying, right? But now along the jetty, you'll see this wave as it laps along. You'll see this kind of this white water, this disturbance, because this baffle chamber has transformed this jetty from once a slightly reflective structure to now a fully dissipated structure. Right? So you can kind of see the sawtooth motion kind of going back and forth. So in order to restore First Peak, all we really have to do is mitigate for that loss of reflection. Right? Now, in other words, another way to say that is we just take that reflective surface and we just move it forward a couple feet. I mean, so that's it. Not rocket science, I mean, I'm doing good on time? No. So the rest of the presentation, I'm just going to show some ideas on what we can do to restore that reflection. Okay, I'm not making any warrants or claims of anything. This is just like the 10,000-foot view. Okay, so no nuts and bolts. We're not going to get down to specifics. But what we could do is we could get the pickup truck, go to the hardware store, grab a couple sheets of plywood, and put them on the base of the jetty. People ask me sometimes how much would it cost to restore First Peak. Well, that's about $500. So right about now during this presentation, I give this presentation in Florida a lot. There's usually somebody in the back of the room that goes, "Oh, come on now." Come on. No, but we're not going to do that. Okay, we're not going to do that. But we have the luxury of actually doing like a pilot project. We can build removable panels made out of composite materials, recycled materials, and we can literally go, with modern forecasting during the summer, we can go down into the jetty, we can install these panels on a flat day in July, restore First Peak for a day, and then take the panels off. It's that simple. We can restore First Peak for a contest, for a festival, for an event, for a pilot project. So around the world in the last 20 years, and we can look forward then to a permanent solution, right? So we can do a temporary and then a permanent. So if we look towards a permanent solution, we can actually lend some technology from the Pier Restoration industry. So on the left, you see the Port of Long Beach with some concrete forms around the base of the wharf. You can see in the center, that's a steel jacket on the 18-inch piling. On the far side there, you can see a complicated underwater installation. Here's a couple more examples on the left. This is a hanging installation, which could be similar to Sebastian Inlet, and there's fiberglass rafts One of the newer technologies coming to market is this carbon fiber wrap for restoring bridges and piers. And I love to show the carbon fiber wrap because carbon fiber wrapping has become very popular in surfboard construction. So we could carbon fiber wrap jetty and make a wave. So. But all of these technologies have the effect of strengthening and preserving coastal structures and piers and overpasses because they're restoration technologies. So one interesting concept we've been throwing around at Sebastian Inlet is, remember, a new jetty was built over the top of the old one. So that old jetty is still in place. It's actually considered a disposable structure. I mean, it's been kind of discarded. So we can go to that old jetty, and we can use it. I'm just showing a combination of technologies here just for example purposes, but we can do carbon fiber, steel jackets, a control arm, and we can restore first peak without even laying a finger on the outer new structure, right? It's an option. Here's just another view, kind of just, and it's completely hollow, there's access, I mean, it's a construction dream to work on that jetty. So, and it's very low impact, right? You really wouldn't notice. So one of my favorite solutions is there's an interesting ecosystem at Sebastian Inlet. You'll see along the base of the pilings, it's a worm reef, and it's very ephemeral. And sometimes in the surf media, you'll hear little blurbs at first peak. Like, oh man, there's a good session at first peak. Well, it does come back every once in a while. It comes back in the wintertime when the worm reef is present. So this photo was taken 2 Decembers ago, and on that day, the wedge was working. So if you can see, the reflected wave's a little harder to see in this photo, but look at the incoming conditions that day where this kid is sitting to the left, right? Add the reflected wave and just look at this wave for a second. Maybe not the wave height or the length of the ride, but just look at that too. Pretty awesome. So this is another photo from that day, around that time period. You can see the interior wall is covered with worm reef, and you see these blooms of worm reef on the outer pilings. Well, they don't last. So in the springtime, they start to fade away. And then in the summer, late spring, summer, early fall, most of the year, this is what the jetty looks like. So why not grow the solution, right? Why not go down to the jetty and put some type of composite brackets with an appropriate custom designed trellis structure? And over time, the barnacles, the flora, the worm reef would kind of take over, and eventually whatever structure you put in place, you wouldn't see it. And we have this kind of unique opportunity to potentially grow a surfing wave. And when I go down to the jetty and I take these photos of the worm reef, I kind of channel my inner tree hugger, and we're documenting these tube worms. Everybody help me with this. I know it's like make tubes. I don't know. I don't know where else to go with that. We'll come back to California now. So I kind of coming out to here today and embracing this invitation to come and speak. I kind of really had 2 real goals. I wanted to kind of share this little story and just let everybody recognize that to move forward with First Peak, we have to have this open mind and this invitation that we're on the cusp of newer understandings of wave energy. So when we look at this photo, we got the incoming wave and the reflected wave. A 2 foot wave plus a 1 foot wave does not equal a 3 foot wave. It equals something completely different. And so now we're seeing these surf pools popping up everywhere, and we're seeing incredible technology at our hands, and we've seen a lot of presentations here with technology. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to embrace this as a new application of wave energy. Okay. So to kind of help everybody get excited, can we do something real quick? Like on the count of 3, can we get like a you? Right? So, listos? 1, 2, 3. You! Okay, and the second thing is to really make this a project and move this forward. There's a lot of questions. What does this mean for surfing and the socioeconomic benefits? I mean, we're talking about restoring a surfing wave, right? It was accidentally created, and now it was accidentally destroyed, and now we can purposely bring it back. I can't answer those questions, but this group can. So I'm here to listen, and I'm here to get perspective, and I'm here to kind of collaborate with everybody and look at this and see if it's something we can move forward and pursue. All right, so Save the Wave, Surf Right, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to economics section. I'm not an economist, I'm a geologist. Chad should be up here talking about economics. He's too busy running an organization. So I will do what I can. But I'm also going to kind of broach the subject that we will talk much more about tomorrow on adaptation. You know, there's been a lot of talk about marine protected areas and water quality and pollution, but the big elephant in the room is coming at us, and it's coming very slowly, but it's going to change our coastlines, it's going to change our dynamics, it's going to change our ecosystems. So I want to make sure, and I'm going to put the pitch out there, that we need to really, in this community, really start to think about what is important about our coast and our coastal communities, and make sure that that stays in the adaptation climate change discussion. So otherwise, we're not going to have beaches and surf spots. So I do a lot of coastal modeling, make a hazard zone. I go to, you know, Imperial Beach, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's my house. That's my, you know, surf shop. What are we going to do? What if we do this? What if? How much is that going to cost? Is it going to be as bad if we do something?" I go to the oceanfront property owners, and they say, "Well, what's my house going to be worth in 30 years?" People of Imperial Beach are going, what's my beach going to look like in 30 years? What's Huntington without the beach? There's a lot of things we can do to adapt. You know, over time we're going to see more damages, bigger storms, more sea level rise, and time. Every community is going to have to choose what they want to accept as an acceptable level of risk. Is, you know, flooding Houston twice in a decade, acceptable risk? Perhaps not. So we're going to be on this path. We're going to make decisions. It's going to lower that level of risk. And there's lots that we can do. We can avoid the hazard, just don't be there. We can move development away. We can retreat, relocate. We can move the hazards away, put something between us and the hazards. We can build walls and, you know, restore waves, dissipate the wave energy farther offshore. We can get out our duct tape and our chewing gum and plug holes and flood-proof and hope it doesn't leak. But these all have their own set of unique secondary impacts. There's a lot of public versus private. The beach, the surf, is our resources. That private property is somebody else's. They paid for that. They have their rights. But do they have the right to take away our public trust resources? A lot of the adaptation are based on a single issue. The wastewater treatment plant could be flooded. The one house is about to erode. We can take a natural solution. We can restore cobbles and dunes. We're going to hear a good talk on Surfers Point Managed Retreat tomorrow. And there's a lot of examples in California and elsewhere of things we can do. It's really easy to make a hazard map compared to modeling human behaviors and management implications. And usually we don't have economics to value these things. And so I'm going to sort of propose a framework here. And, you know, my house is eroding. This is in the news. It's been in the news since, you know, since we've come to the coasts. On the left, we see a couple of examples, and I think I'll skip through one of them. These are the most common types of adaptation strategies. We build a rock pile, wall, buries the beach. We build a seawall, reflects the wave energy, not always creating waves, but destroying the beaches. Sometimes we build these little cross-shore groins to trap sand and widen the beach to help. Okay? They all have their secondary impacts, but I want to propose this framework, and it's that column along the top. We've got the private property and upland development. We have a zone that is often armored or structured. And then we have the dry sand beach, we have the intertidal beach, and then we have the offshore subtidal reefs, habitats, beach breaks. That didn't work. Many of you have seen that over time, you've all seen something. You go to the beach and there's shorebirds and sand dollars and sand crabs and As sea level rises, that beach gets squeezed, and we start losing our beaches because we're protecting what's behind it at the expense of the sand, expense of the dry sand, expense of the intertidal, and over time, the expense of our surf spots. I'm worried about Santa Cruz. Everything's a low tide spot. We get 3 feet of sea level rise and we've armored that coast and we don't continue to erode the coast, we're gonna drown our surf spots. That's a real fear I have for here and for many places in the world. So this framework, this is, who cares about these? You know, the developed, everybody knows that private property owner, they really care about their property. And most land use decisions are based on their preference. But that beach is public. It's the towel space, it's the sand castle, it's the, you know, the tourism revenue, it's the beach volleyball. The intertidal, there's the surf fishermen, the skimboarders, the beach walkers. The subtidal, we have surfing and diving and kiteboarding. We know how to price that upland. There's an assessed value. There's a land value and a structure value. We can figure that out. We sell those, exchange and transactions. It's really hard to price these other things. Then there's the intangibles, those natural defenses, the ecology. What is it for everybody's experience to see the sea otters yesterday, or the whales? What if those aren't there? What's that worth? I don't know. I love living here. It's really expensive to live here. There's also this human health. This, what's that smile on the guy with no legs when he's out surfing? The kids who are just getting that opportunity with disabilities. Those are priceless. But this is how we do economics, okay? That house is $3 million, 100 square foot, or 100 linear foot of shoreline. We can armor that for $500,000, okay? So beach recreation, I don't know how many that is. Ecology, I don't know. What's a sea otter worth? I don't know. Salmon, I don't know. You can eat it, it's 20 bucks a pound. You got 120 bucks a pound. Human health, I don't know. Doctors in Great Britain are prescribing beach walks. Prescribe. Please, I need a new doctor. So our existing coastal management results is 3 million plus, you know, say 500,000, but we don't know what that costs or that costs or that costs, and it's really hard to figure out, so the answer is 0. I know that's the wrong answer. We need something else. So we've tried to apply this framework now to about 4 or 5 different jurisdictions. Got to enjoy working in Imperial Beach with Serge and that great community. And we looked at 5 different adaptation strategies. And we looked at coastal armoring, let's build seawall, let's move the houses, let's build growings and trap sand so we have a wider beach to sort of provide recreation and buffer the storms. We looked at standard beach nourishment practices, and then sort of a cobbled dune nourishment. We modeled beach width and upland changes through time. We looked at recreation and habitat values, and we applied it. And this is the results. That's my only squiggly line plot. It's not even a squiggly line. I didn't connect the dots. But basically, right now, it makes sense to armor or to build growings and retain sand and keep a wide beach. But as we go forward in time, and a lot of that's because most of the Imperial Beach is already armored, so we don't have a lot of cost to build new armor. We just have to maintain it. But as we go forward in time and that beach is lost, that tourism driver, that habitat, those really difficult to quantify, I know I'm using the wrong number, but we're using a number. We start to see that the dumbest thing we can do over time is what we've been doing as our coastal management response. We need to start including these other aspects. So, quick finding in Imperial Beach, if we continue the coastal armoring route and do nothing else, we're left with only damp sand beaches by as early as 2035. Dry sand, all the beaches could be gone by 2050. If we look at managed retreat, we're going to lose 2 to 3 rows of houses. But we can look at those losses. We can look at those gains. We can look at the ripple effects. We haven't tried to do surfing yet. I just got this submitted this morning at 10:30, so I can now show it. These are the value estimates of surfing and beach recreation in Ventura County. They include some famous spots like Rincon or Surfers Point and C Street. Some of these recreational values, $20 million a year for the Ventura County community for having Rincon. $17 million for just surf. We've got a whole bunch of surf spots, some better quality, some less. C Street, which is much more consistent, gets a lot more use. So it has a higher economic value. We look at the total value of beach and coastal recreation. Now that's more beach and beach access and surfing, not necessarily bike riding and a lot of the other almost, also coastal activities. We have $156 million annually to the county. $3 million in tax revenues to feed the general fund and support government activities. $89 million is based on surfing. If we start using these numbers in that calculus about what we're going to do in the future, you give me $89 million a year, I'll buy 89 houses on the front and move them. We have the economics. We're not using those tools. And so I'm going to issue a challenge here to everybody here. We've got a lot of citizen activists. We've got a lot of passionate individuals. I've cried today listening to everybody's stories. It's beautiful. The passion is contagious. We, as a pseudo-economist, impersonating economist, I can break down economic voodoo into two things. How much times how many? We don't know how many. How many people go to our beaches? I don't know. How many people surf? Well, today, not many right now. Wait till low tide. So to start quantifying these, let's start counting. Let's activate our citizens to collect that information. Let's get some graduate students to figure out how much people are willing to pay. And let's start including this in our adaptation moving forward. Thank you.
Questions of value in relation to women surfing and the legendary contest at Mavericks in Half Moon Bay. Yeah. One question I have for us at the outset is, what are we learning from the controversies at Mavericks? Why was the issue there of surfing in that contest, in that spot for women to surf? That is, why was it so divisive, so bitter? The battle potentially can teach us a lot. As many of you know who are more local, Mavericks falls within the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and like all of the California coastline areas, uses of the coast are governed by the California Coastal Commission. So Mavericks, as most of us know here who are local, falls within a protected site in the language of this panel. The Coastal Commission recently heard from a group called the Committee for Equity in Women's Surfing about the history of women's exclusion from the Mavericks contest, and the commission ruled that in order for contest organizers at Mavericks to get a coastal use permit, they needed to include a women's heat. So this is an instance in which an environmental regulatory body has taken its mission, which is to create democratic access, and it has used that environmental mission and vision to make a ruling about civil rights, specifically the civil rights of women, their rights of access. Applying what seems to be an environmental justice logic, the commission judged that women had been excluded from access to public waterways. To fulfill the broader character of the Coastal Act, it was a matter of environmental justice, they deemed, to include women in the contest. Now, of course, Mavericks didn't break this year, but next season the World Surf League will showcase the world's best big wave women surfers as contestants. They will become part of the we, who was previously the men who surf mountains. Okay, so certainly this is a win for women's big wave surfing, but what kind of a win, with what kind of a political vision is it? but what kind of a win, and what kind of a political vision is it to include women? That's part of how I want to engage the topic of value. What does inclusion do? What does it not do? Related, of what help is the inclusion of women to activist efforts to save waves? All right, obviously that's the mission of our conference, that's a shared value here, but these seem generally like disconnected events, the inclusion of women in saving waves. But are they disconnected? Through these questions, I'm working toward the panel theme of value, how we define value, how we define we. Who is the we that we're working with in all of our conversations today? So again, I'm from Rice University in Houston on the Gulf Coast. I direct the Institute for Women Surfers with the aid of a steering committee, and a number of our participants are actually here in the audience. I have flyers. The Institute has a website, it has a Facebook page, there's a lot of ways for you to find out more about it. It was founded collaboratively about 5 years ago when a number of surfers reached out to me after having read the book I wrote, Surfer Girls in the New World Order, which had a lot of examples of activism, women's activism related to surf and to environment. These people reached out to me, they said they like those examples, and can we do more of them? I said, yeah, that's good, let's do that. The Institute is a social change organization dedicated to grassroots political education. We are a nonprofit think tank creating feminist analyses relevant to all of surf culture, not just to women. So we're interested in surfonomics and responsible development and environment and in art. The kind of thinking I'm forwarding here is an example of the kind of thinking we're trying to do. We do trainings that bring together groups of women for 3 days for surfing, discussion, and for mutual aid learning. We try to teach each other what we know. Our most recent training was held at Stanford, and you can find a write-up of it entitled Beaches as Spaces of Democracy, which gives you some indication of how we're trying to work with beach spaces on the Stanford blog. Our trainings involve a curriculum that we designed. One part of our curriculum took us to Sacramento last week with Jennifer Savage, a surf writer, who did a great job organizing everything. Thank you, Jennifer. And other Institute participants. We share our work about issues of access with the California Green Summit audience, and later we met with a number of lawmakers. So the last gathering at Stanford addressed the topic, issues of access, which was of course timely because of all the Mavericks issues, and it gave us a chance to delve in more deeply to what access means. Certainly access means like official exclusions that require formal politics, the kind of politics that involve the California Coastal Commission. But as one of our participants, Jamila Hubbard, Brown Girl Surf, noted, access also means, and I think you were talking about this, these less tangible kinds of barriers or benefits. For her, they had to do with cultural barriers or barriers in your imagination about who should be in certain spaces and who shouldn't be in certain spaces. So we can think about gates and fences and contest rules that keep people out, as surf riders, among others, have done so well, and which the Coastal Act, of course, specifically prohibits. But we need also to think about other kinds of prohibitions, less formal, less official, but totally influential in the we who show up or don't show up in the lineup. The we who feel a sense of belonging in surf culture or in surf movements, or the we's who might not. So what I thought might be productive in this particular group is to notice how many groups are in this group, how many we's make up the we that is committed to saving waves. There's a lot of we's here, which also by definition means there's a lot of difference. I use the term, a lot of the work I'm doing now, between publics to characterize movements between different kinds of we's. At a basic level, the term between publics asks us to notice how many publics might be addressed in anyone's work. Here, for instance, there are nonprofits, there are university we's, there are non-US we's, non-English speaking we's. All of these different publics have their own practices about what counts as evidence or as priorities. as a concept between publics forces the issue with questions of which public, which audience, which we, who is the we? For instance, who is the we of saving the waves? Who do waves get saved for? Which waves get saved and for whom? Who does the saving? Those kinds of issues. Of course, there are male and female we's, racial we's. What I'd like to focus on for a minute is the issue of exclusion of women specifically, not to talk about how women are mistreated, but rather to think about the political vision of inclusion, because that is repeatedly on the calendar of our conversations here, as it is so many environmental movement contexts. And so I think it's good to think about what do we mean by this as a political vision. So absolutely, it's good for there to be inclusion of women at the beach and in contests and so on. We want access for women to beaches and to contests. But as a political vision, the ideal of inclusion has limits. Inclusion at root is an equal rights kind of argument. It says let women in. They want a piece of the pie. The problem with inclusion is that it doesn't quite tell us what the problems really are. It's diagnostically weak. If it tells us the fact that women are excluded, it tells us less about the operations of women's oppression, for instance, about how it gets reproduced, and how women's oppression is linked to any kind of issue around environment. It stays sort of stuck in the wanting equality part, which is not a program of women's liberation or the liberation of nature from hyper-exploitation, which I think we're all on that program. We all identify that as a program to be on. Equal rights as an ideal for women isn't the same as women's liberation. The distinction is pretty fundamental for university kinds of feminisms, but it doesn't travel well to other non-university publics. And that's a problem, especially for issues related to environment. So how might we take our thinking further? And explicitly, feminist environmental philosophy can help us, I think, because it tells us more of what the problem really is. It's not just about inclusion, including people who are excluded. The problem is a system of thought and power, and here I think I'll just move quickly through the slides, in which women, nature, and people of color are dominated, seen as inferior or other. And Liz Clark gave us some informal statement of this kind of feminist environmentalist philosophy in the talk she was just giving right now. So I've made a handout with some of these statements later if you all would like to look at it, but I'll just walk through them quickly. So these are basic precepts of feminist environmentalism. Ideas about women, nature, and animals overlap and reinforce each other and make those categories easier to exploit. Women and people of color are supposedly closer to nature. Therefore, they're more, quote unquote, naturally exploitable. I'm skipping. Women and nature reproduce. They have usable resources. I'm thinking of the frequently mentioned fertile, fat, female, old fish. I mean, it's an interesting image, right? They have usable resources. Nature produces for human sustenance, but women reproduce the social order. So here are some implications for us to think through. Notice the language and the politics of gender here. Nature is gendered female, Mother Earth. Nature is pure, virgin, fertile. It's there for the taking. It can be spoiled, raped, and ruined, etc. Of course, nature under capitalism can be made to, the spoils of it, the bounty of it can be made to belong to the people who own it. Women's ownership of the bounty of their own bodies is always an issue. It's not a given that you can take control over your own reproductive abilities. On the topic of gender politics of movements, and this is true for all environmental movements. There's no particular comment on this wonderful conference. This is true across the world, that men lead these movements and women. Thank you for being here. We're really happy once again, especially because there are more Peruvians like me who's going to present. This is
It's good for all my country, and I hope I can share and give some points important for the preservation in waves. I'm Carlo Grigoletto from Peru. I really specialize, my background is in business, especially in the surf industry. But also I love this thing about protecting waves that I learned in the last few years. We have some issues there, and people have to understand that we have gold, and the problem is that people don't understand what we have. And as you were saying, we have the climate change. I took those pictures. This is from Puemape, which is a surf break between Chicama and Pacasmayo. Super long waves there. And I have a place there. This is my neighbor, like 300 meters next to me. I said, hey bro, what are you doing? Oh yeah, I'm going to protect from the ocean. Okay, so you are dropping rocks. Yeah, I'm going to put some cement on the top. Okay, nice. So every time there is a big swell, every time his place is full of water. The other one is in a place 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers south of Huanchaco. It's pretty sad because these guys are facing erosion. And every time they want to protect their land, so they drop trash. And depending on the type of trash, the people in Huanchaco receive this maybe 2-3 days later. And even if they clean every day there's more trash. Saying that, we're going to talk about economics. This is a great quote because we have to understand we have gold in our shores, in our waves. Especially in countries like developing countries like mine, it's a great opportunity to make business, especially in surf tourism that I've been working at also. And we need to create jobs. Tourism is a great thing to create small jobs. Entrepreneurship. So what I want to present right now, I'm going to put more pictures, but just a little bit of this. It's like it's a business way. In a business way to see the conservation projects that all of us we have. You know, we want to preserve our wave, preserve the land, preserve the ocean. But I really would like to see you guys doing thinking a business way. I got a business background. I study business, but in some way people think that making money is not the best way, but the thing is about when you do business, you are going for profits, and profit could be not only money, it could be social profit, it could be social profit for environment, and we need to put that on our minds, you know. I'm not here to show you how to make a business plan, but when you want to do a business, you start with something, and it's understanding what's going on around you. Understanding who is who, how they were saying, how many, how much. This thing you have to understand. And then you plan your people, your team, your operations, your processes, your finances to go to that profit. I call sustainability. Sustainability is when you put economics, social, environmental, try to put in a balance. That's the way that you can make profit. So after that, I'm going to put a couple examples of what we were doing with surfonomics. I love surfonomics. Chad is one of the gurus here, and it's a great name, but actually it's a marketing research. But the information we are getting from, as they were saying, and they said in a few minutes, we are not using it. We just check these big numbers. Oh yeah, how much money brings to the economy, how much money, how many tourists, how much they spend. But we should go a little bit further. And I think this economic things, this economic result should be shared and should be spread all around the surf town, all around the surf community. So the World Surfing Reserve, for example, is a great brand. I mean, watching from the business point of view, you have for all the people that works in the World Surfing Reserve, you have a brand. It's like having Bisla, Quicksilver, or whatever belong, and you need to develop, or Patagonia, you have to develop. So for example, you know, the results we have in Huanchaco, we have one of the most important things was people were going to Huanchaco because they want to surf. You know, they want to surf. And at the other table, there's not much. We can see not too much. That's we want to go a little bit further, because with these numbers we can teach the people in Huanchaco to be entrepreneurs. For example, when I was doing my post degree, one professor came here and said, "Oh yeah, you know, Peru is the country number one of entrepreneurs." Oh, it was amazing, great for me. But the thing is, we are number one entrepreneurs, but we are not good business people, because we don't do our task before doing our business. So there are a lot of numbers that, for example, what happened in Huanchaco? When I've been there, I saw there are like 10 restaurants, let's say maybe more, but let's talk about 10 restaurants. From those 10 restaurants, only 7 are full. The other 3, no one out. So these other 3 people that are investing their savings, or I don't know where they come from the money, but for sure, yeah, it's a hard money to get. They have to drop the price, they have to give a bad customer service. And you know, all that information that we have in this economic study, if they could check it out before doing their business, they could avoid that and go for another business. But for sure, there are more tourists coming, they will need more services, they will need different things. But it's like, okay, there's a restaurant, oh yeah, I'm gonna open another restaurant. But that's the thing about having numbers. That's the thing about doing this type of economic research. And every, I'm not saying only for the World Surfing Reserve, but for every surf town, if we want to protect our waves, it's important to spread information, use those numbers, and do workshop with the community. So this, they have this power with this information. Other example, what we got is the people in Huanchaco are thinking that they have a big pollution problem. And in my experience, tourism is a really sensitive industry. And the problem is, as an example, well, in 2002 I moved to Bali. I wanted to live there, change my life. And what happened there is like in October 12, 2002, there was a bombing. 500 people died. I almost got killed. I was 4 blocks from the bomb. And 1 week later, everybody out. Everybody's gone. You know? So how sensitive is the tourism? You know? Or for example, a Global Wave Conference in Rosarito. I went there, no tourists, because they have the pilots problems. So what I'm saying with this, you have here the information. You can see what's gonna come. If it's polluted, the beach is polluted, people are gonna go out, they're gonna come, it's gonna be bad for the economy. And this is the example of information we got. I have another example here. I had the chance to be part of the team for this first governmental project about analyze the surf tourism in Peru, which is basically another marketing research, it's another surfonomics. But what was the aim? The aim, among any others, was going to convince the government to do infrastructure for 2019 Pan American Games, infrastructure for the surfing, you know. And we did it. It was pretty fast. We traveled all around Peru. It was great. And we arrived to the aim. The government accept that. I'm not gonna discuss if it's good or bad, if they're in the right job or not, but it's happening because these numbers show that surfing industry, at least in Peru, is bringing money, it's bringing tourists, and it's giving opportunities to small surf towns that they need to create jobs. Of course, we got more numbers, and I really expect that we can use it in the future. I'm gonna end it with, finish with, this is the project that I have right now. Is we have La Costa Verde. From some people that don't know Lima, Peru, Lima is the capital, the only capital in South America next to the ocean. This is where surfing started in Peru. A ton of waves, well, not ton of waves, but many waves. And there is a conflict there between, this is almost 20 Ks. We have La Herradura, some people here say the way north. This is the best, one of the best waves in South America, long, big barrels. What I would like to see is like a business plan, you know? I really would like to, this conflict between a public space and a road, which is the reason there, I would like to become this in a public space. So the first thing as a business is understand what's going on. Is understand, do your marketing research. If we don't do that, we don't know where to go. We are just thinking and thinking and thinking. We don't know how many, we don't know who can be our allies, we don't know how many of them, we don't know how much people spend, etc., 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 and then make the plan. This is the problem. 3 lines and no beach. Last Global Wave Conference, I came and said, yeah, we won a battle. We stopped that for do the 3rd line, and then what happened is 4 months later, the government changed and forgot all the agreements. In compensation, they give us night surfing. Well, I'm not going to discuss if it's good or bad. There are more surfers now, can surf from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. in one wave. But this is La Herradura again. This is La Herradura again. This is one of the best waves in Peru, and it's full of trash.